Did he go and watch TV? At what point was that phone unplugged? Was she going for the phone? You know, these are things that we may never know. Jason Friedman, what do you make of the fact that the police walked through that home? Rachel's friend walked through that home. They were all desperately searching. They looked in the closets. They looked everywhere, but they didn't find the bodies right there in the bed with a comforter over them.
Yeah, well, I think the first time they entered the home, I'm not sure they went upstairs. It was a wellness visit. They wanted to see if anything was obviously askew, astray, any signs of forced entry, any signs of foul play. And I believe the second time they entered the home, they did in fact go upstairs, and ultimately, obviously, the bodies were discovered. So it had to do with what they were thinking while they went into the house. Ultimately, the second time was when we know they found the deceased.
Well, prosecutors say financial problems drove Neil Entwistle to murder. They've called witnesses to testify about the Entwistles' bank accounts. Yesterday, all right, we've been looking closely at the testimony of this police sergeant on the stand. The initial walkthrough of the house when the Entwistles were reported missing revealed nothing, but upon closer inspection on the second time, we're now zeroing in on the bedroom and on the bed itself, and you saw there the picture of the bed with the comforter over it. Looks to be like one of those fluffy down comforters, that the bodies indeed were buried underneath there, and he's ultimately the one who lifted up a corner, saw a foot, called his partner to come in, and they ultimately discovered the bodies. Jason Friedman, let me bring you in, former prosecutor. This is basically background. This is finding of the bodies. Overall, how helpful is this to the prosecution? Because to some extent, they have to admit the police officers botched the job on the first search, don't they?
Well, I don't know if they want to admit they botched the job. It had to do with their frame of mind and what they were looking for when they went in. But this witness is very important, because keep in mind, a prosecutor is just telling a story to the jury, and every detail in a story is important. Imagine if you were reading a novel and every 20 pages or so there were a few pages missing. The prosecutor wants to make sure there's no missing pages in the story that he's telling to the jury, and that's why every single detail that's being elicited is vital to the case, in my opinion.
Well, I think that's well said, Jason, and in addition, it sounds like they were clearly following protocols when they began looking for Neil Entwistle, and initially believed that he may have been a violent crime victim as well. After all, the wife and the baby are killed. Perhaps Neil Entwistle is also a victim, so they did the right thing in treating the crime scene in that manner, didn't they?
Absolutely. They called it a well-being checkup. They were initially going into the home to look if anything was out of place, not where it should be, any signs of forced entry, any obvious signs that a criminal act had been committed. They didn't see it when they first entered the home during their cursory walk through the home. And the second day, they obviously did a little more detailed search and ultimately discovered the bodies in the upstairs bedroom.
All right, let's get this break in while there's a lack